We have storms, we have heat, and we're also on the verge of potentially getting our next named storm of the 2023 hurricane season. What's going on, guys? I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kegas, and in this video, we're going to talk about the storms moving through Florida later in the day on Thursday. We'll have more storms to end the work week. The heat staying cranked up. Now we're pretty much in our typical July Florida heat. We're going to get rid of the excessive stuff. It's still hot. We know that. But nonetheless, we're getting rid of the 110, 115 feel that we had last week. In the tropical front, there's that thing out in the Atlantic that we talked about in a previous video. I will break that down and talk about another round of Saharan dust impacting parts of Florida as we get into the weekend and next week. Before we get into the video, if you want to stay updated on all things Florida weather and, of course, the tropics, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. If you happen to find this content helpful, which I hope you do, please hit the thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. All right, we're going to start with Central Florida, then we're going to expand things to the entire state of Florida, and then we're going to venture into the tropics again. I'll show you that little blob that could become our next named storm of the season. Future radar showing by 6 o'clock some rocking storms here right along the I-4 corridor, really from Palm Coast west of Daytona Beach, maybe closing in on Sanford, downtown Orlando, into Kissimmee, St. Cloud. So really, it's going to be east tonight. So maybe a few stray showers lingering in Bushnell, the Villages, and Ocala. But it looks like, anyway, that the way that the wind is oriented here, that we're going to keep everything to the west. So the further east you are, I should say, from west to east, the further east you are, the better shot you have seeing those storms. There's 10 o'clock tonight. Could still have a few of these lingering late into the evening. Then we're going to do it all again tomorrow. I think again on the later side of the day. We're going to start things off early on Friday. Watch what happens, though, as we get into the early afternoon. There's 2 and 3 o'clock. We'll start to see a few of these storms bubble up along the west coast sea breeze right there closer to the I-75 corridor. Those gradually march into what's going to be another west coast sea breeze dominant day, meaning that the storms are going to be moving from west to east. So here we go, dinner time and beyond. If you're starting the weekend hanging out on the patio, likely going to have some storms around, especially close to the I-95 corridor. If you're watching from the villages like Panosofsky, Bushnell, Eustis, Mount Dora, Apopka, you might be able to see a pretty cool light show outside from this distant storms way off to the east. Maybe a stray storm back towards us as well along I-75. But by and large, by 7 o'clock, I do think on Friday, most of those storms will start to push toward the I-95 corridor. In terms of the heat index, again, it's hot. We know that. It's Florida. 100 to 105, that's going to be your feel as we get into Friday. Again, we're at least shaving off 5 to 10 degrees from where we were last time in terms of the feel. Again, remember, the heat index is important because when there's more moisture in the atmosphere, it's harder for your body to cool itself because sweat is not evaporating like it would in drier air. That's why when it's crazy hot in the desert, it's a little better for you. I mean, when it gets to 120, 125, that's bad too. But what I'm saying is when it's a drier heat, your body can cool itself a little more efficiently. We have the humidity, of course, here in Florida. There's 3 o'clock on your Saturday afternoon. It's the same thing, more like 100 to 105. I want to show you from a Florida perspective now. I always like to do this for the entire state of Florida. If you're watching from St. Petersburg or Sarasota, Fort Myers, same kind of deal for us in South Florida, towards Belle Glade, west of Fort Lauderdale, and Fort Pierce, St. Cloud. Down in for us in Miami, we have those rock and thunderstorms as well. A few scattered storms closer to the panhandle of Florida as well. Friday, 6 o'clock in the morning, be on the lookout for some early morning thunderstorms to around Pensacola to the west of Tallahassee towards Port St. Joe, Mexico Beach. All that trying to push on through. There we go at 2 o'clock on Friday. And this is that west coast sea breeze again, starting to fire back up west of Miami, west of Belgrade and Lake Okeechobee, right around Sarasota, St. Pete, Tampa. That's where we're going to start to see those storms fire up, and you see everything kind of push to the east, towards the Atlantic coast from the Gulf Coast. So that's how storms are going to move as we get into your Friday. And really the same thing again on Thursday. We have that breeze out of the west. Here is our blob. Again, this is no threat to Florida, but it is on the cusp of becoming the next named storm of the season, whether it's fully tropical or whether it's a hybrid system. That sub prefix there is likely going to be a subtropical depression or subtropical storm, meaning again it's gaining some of its strength from the difference in temperature of the atmosphere while also getting some of its strength from the warmer waters of the Atlantic Ocean. You see there's a nice healthy little swirl there, certainly on the northern end. It's in this orange area that the Hurricane Center giving this a 60% shot for development over the next 2 days and 7 days. Again, this is becoming likely. It's looking healthy. Again, it doesn't have your typical tropical system look, and that's where the hybrid nature comes in on that, and that's why there's an opportunity. If it doesn't become fully tropical, it would be a subtropical, either depression or storm, based on its strength. But again, those do get named. The next named storm on the list is going to be Don. Mentioned earlier in the video, the dust. We had some great sunrises and great sunsets because of the Saharan dust that arrived really Sunday into Monday of this current week. Just enough concentration of dust, about 15 to 20,000 feet above your head in the atmosphere, to help to reflect that the sunlight, direct it all over and kind of scatter it to increase the color in the sky, those more vibrant reds. When it gets too thick, though, that's whenever we start to have the storms again. We see the storms go down a little bit because of that drier air in the atmosphere. But once we also see that dust come through and it's too thick, we will start to see kind of that haze kind of block out the sun just a little bit. Another big plume of dust, though, trying to work its way from the Sahara Desert all the way out into the Atlantic. It's hanging out towards Puerto Rico now. You see another light to moderate push of dust towards the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, Cuba, Jamaica, getting into the Yucatan Peninsula. And then also an even thicker plume. They typically start to lose their concentration a little bit the further they get west, of course, into the Atlantic. As you might imagine, further away from the source region, it starts to thin out just a little bit. We still have some light dust in our atmosphere. That's Thursday evening into Friday, and you kind of see that light white film on your screen. All the thick stuff, though, is hanging down towards the Florida Keys. I do think the thicker plume of dust this time around is going to be impacting South Florida and then really heading towards the West Gulf Coast, like towards Texas. Louisiana maybe as it kind of pinwheels up and around, but you see the thick white towards the bottom of your screen there. As we get into Wednesday, we have some of that trying to push back up. That's July 19th now, the brighter whites, and then towards the end of that, you kind of see there's 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, July 23rd, some light dust towards Central Florida and North Florida, and then some really, really thick stuff towards the Bahamas, towards Lake Okeechobee, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, maybe getting into the parts of the Space Coast, certainly the Treasure Coast, and then down to extreme Southwest Florida and the Keys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, if you found this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you do want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, especially as we venture through hurricane season, again, nice and quiet right now from a Florida perspective, but we are on the verge of that next named system. We'll see if it happens over the next couple of days, get a higher likelihood of that happening. You have to hit subscribe. Please do that, and we will catch you guys next time. Appreciate you guys tuning in, watching, and subscribing. Have a great rest of your Thursday.